Limbus Company is a turn-based gacha game which is on PC and mobile. The game is made by Project Moon. In case you aren't familiar with them, they are the studio which has the track record of making gore enjoyers question their life decisions. The game takes place in the city, yes, that is the official name. It's roughly the size of Belgium and has 6 billion people living in it. Don't question the logistics of what I just said. Now, as is the case with all big cities, crime is as apparent as my gambling addiction. To truly explain the setting, imagine a dystopian hellhole, alright? Now imagine that multiplied by 10. In some stories, murder and war crimes are a big deal. In Limbus Company, it's a rite of passage. And that's the game's biggest strength, its story, setting, and characters. It's not a hyperbole to say the experience from this game's story is unlike any other game I've played. In case you don't believe me, let me talk about the opening of the game, the literal first 10 minutes. Now in most gachas it begins with a waifu who is, 9 times out of 10, a literal child waking you up. Turns out you have amnesia, you also got some strength or power that's useful, and all of a sudden everyone wants to suck your dick. But Limbus Company starts with you, the player character, Dante from the Devil May Cry series, getting your shit rocked by LARPing furries. Right before they kill you, the bus appears to come and save you. Out walk the 12 sinners of the game, the playable characters. They come out, insult the furries, display their dominance, promise to fight for you, and have the Sigma grind set theme blaring in the background. Half a minute later, 11.5 of them are dead. They got absolutely eviscerated. Before the last one dies, they said they promised to fight, not to win. After that incredibly minor distraction of a one-sided battle, the furries go back to kill you until Virgilius, yes, I'm not fucking around, that's his name, comes in to actually save you. Now Virgilius is the guide of the magical school bus named Mephistopheles. I'ma call it Limbusi. Oh, and it can literally eat people, by the way. Charon is the driver of the bus, and the 12, now deceased, people littering the ground are the playable characters. Thankfully, Dante has the ability to resurrect them, so even after that embarrassing loss, they can now go forth and create even worse ones. In case that doesn't sound crack-headed to you, let me explain the personalities of the 12 sinners. Yi Song always talks in the stupidest poetry imaginable, and the worst part about that is the fact that nobody asks for him to speak. Foss talks as if she's an AI created to always make you feel like a moron. Dawn radiates absolute gremlin energy and is likely a wanted criminal in 15 districts. Ryoshu is a sadist, and just by saying that, 80% of the player base now simps for her in the name of the holy CBT. Mersalt is a human chameleon. Honglu made me take a 45-degree turn. Unlike Ryoshu, Heathcliff isn't a sadist, he just loves the sport of violence. Ishmael is somehow more bland than a pumpkin spice latte. Rodion loves gambling, which helps me justify my addiction to it. Sinclair gets bludgeoned by a baseball bat, more on that one later. Wheatus is a kiss-ass who has probably committed war crimes, and Gregor definitely has committed war crimes. To put it simply, the squad is 50% brain rot stupid and 50% actual psychopaths. Meanwhile, Charon has absolutely 0 brain cells, and Virgilius is always looking for a reason to insult or kill, usually kill, the team. In case you haven't pieced it together, this game is basically Konosuba but rated M. I mean hell, shortly after the opening, Ishmael tells Heathcliff he's being loud, which then causes him to get mad, which results in Ryoshu doing the entirely reasonable act of cutting his head off and making an abbreviation called tranches, which then results in Dawn creating a giant hole where her head used to be, and then Ryota complains that a drop of blood spilled on her. Shortly after Dante revived them, Heathcliff decided to play baseball with Sinclair's skull. And as all of this is happening, Virgilius is in the back going,
Kill yourself now. You should kill yourself now. And you're looking for now. You should kill yourself now.
To put it mildly, this game feels like a D&D session if all the players did a line of blow prior to the campaign. However, comedy is not the only tone of the story. The game has a perfect blend between comedy and serious moments, which is important because if in every scene the writers try to fist in the most out-of-place jokes, then the story will lack emotion or impact. Something you see a lot in recent Marvel movies, for example. However, Limbus has been able to make heartbreaking storylines whilst also being one of the funniest games I've played. But before I talk about how good the story is, let me speedrun laying down the setting because it relates to the plot. As I said, it takes place in the city, which has 25 districts. Each district is comprised of its nest and back streets. The nest is for the high class or important people to live in. There they have a company which works on that nest singularity, which is a unique piece of technology only they know how to operate. For example, the old L Corp had a singularity which quickly produced energy. The catch was that they made SCPs to produce that energy, and that multiple people died there, but that was common enough to forget about it. Each singularity has some dark side to it that the public doesn't know about. Now, when it comes to the back streets, there's only one good way to describe it, and that is for me to pose a question. So, have you ever seen the bottom of a porta potty? That gaping hellmouth of piss, shit, and vomit is the exact living condition you should expect from the back streets. It's the ghetto if it was somehow even more ghetto. The people in the back streets are constantly committing or being victims to crimes. Because of that, crime organizations called syndicates have been made. And there exists one called the Index, which will protect you, but will occasionally give you a prescript that you must completely follow out or they will absolutely murder you. Now you may think that isn't half bad, but here's an example of one. If the first person you meet outside today answers your greetings by lifting their right hand, take your heart out. If the person ignores your greetings, remove your own heart from your body. Yep, so they're crazy, but so are the back streets. Oh, and the city has these laws that the head made. They're the rulers of the city. Now, if you break those, someone from the head will track you down and waffle stomp you or send you to the outskirts, which is basically the back streets, but somehow worse. So that is basically the world Project Moon has crafted over their 3 games, and within them they hold the PTSD to rival those cringy moments that keep you up at night. But you don't need to play the prior games to enjoy Limbus. Playing them will only serve to enhance the experience, but they aren't required. Now, after explaining the setting, it becomes apparent as to why I love the story. That's because there is such great world building, and from there the story could go to so many interesting places, which is important for a live service game. Currently the story is focused on introducing the characters, and to do that we go on trauma-inducing therapy trips. Like, imagine Persona 4, but the characters have to go through the times they ruin their entire lives. Each chapter relates to introducing a character, and even when they're done introducing the characters, the story has so many places to go. Like exploring the head, different syndicates, who Dante was before his amnesia, what the easiest way to get rid of Don is, where District Z is, and that only names a few. The best part is the pacing is amazing. I'm a fan of Arknights, but it is rather hard to defend the fact that Chapter 8 had 78,000 words in it. I mean, that's deadass half the word count of the fucking 2 towers. But the story in this game went by quickly and had me invested in the characters in no time at all. They're all lovable, absolutely batshit insane, but lovable. Except for Mersault though, mainly because in total he has spoken like 11 lines and I'm probably overestimating that number. Also, the game has full voice acting in Korean and some of the voices will definitely make you gay. Also, the music is absolutely godlike and has some tracks made by Millie, who is known for making the Goblin Slayer opening, and a song about a machine feeling like a tabby cat. Now, the best part about the game is its story, but what about its gameplay? Now, the gameplay is where I have some flaws, but they are honestly really easy to fix. Before talking about that, I was going to talk about how the gameplay works, but these images I found on Reddit summarize it really well. All I need to add is the way clashes work is that you have a base amount and a value is added based on the coin flip. So if this coin rolls heads, then I get 5 added to my base power. Every time you win a clash, you remove an enemy's coin, so they will have the upper amount they can roll reduced and the total number of hits they can do is reduced. Which means if you have a really close battle with an enemy and they finally win the clash, they won't be hitting you with that many coins as you got rid of them. Or if you go against an enemy and never lose a clash, then you get to hit them proportional to the number of coins you got. When it's broken down, it becomes really easy to understand, but the tutorial the game gives you is the equivalent to explaining quantum mechanics in 1 sentence. To put it simply, that shit ain't working out. The tutorial sounded like a starving giraffe reciting the bar. I mean, okay, it wasn't that bad, but it was rather lackluster. Also, the gameplay may sound very RNG dependent with the coin flips, but with the right team you can minimize RNG heavily, either by choosing clashes where you can't lose or by having ones where losing won't hurt you that much. Now, the systems behind the gameplay are good, they have depth. The game just released and these are all the different effects already in the game. That's already a lot, yet they're still missing smoke from Library of Ruina, so I'd imagine more effects will be added with time. Now, depending on if you're getting shitted on or if you're the shitter, your sanity will change, which increases the chance of a successful coin flip at high sanity and the opposite at low sanity. Added on to that, you have the different elements of the game. Now, I don't remember what the hell they're called, but thankfully they are color-coded and remind me of that time I downed a pack of Crayola as a toddler. And also as a teenager. Matching your favorite crayon taste to one another gives you a bonus called a resonance, which increases your damage, and using that move gives you a resource of that color. When you get enough resources, you can use an attack called Ego. To explain them simply, you basically violate the Geneva Convention when you use that move, alright? This can create times where you wanted to use the green flavor to get the resource to recreate 9/11, but that move is weak so you'd probably lose the clash if you chose it. But on the other hand, you have the purple flavor, which is a stronger move that also gives you resonance, but you can't see Gregor inject my daily drugs into his arm. And there are times where you may not want to use Ego because it changes based on your sanity. Like how low sanity Ego can lead to a femboy smashing a whirligig saw into Don. Honestly, maybe you should use Ego at low sanity. The gameplay has many moments where you need to think out your strategy. The game plan is never simple, which is what I don't see in many turn-based games. For example, in Persona 5, if I went up against a boss who was weak to fire, my entire game plan is concentrate and Agadine afterwards, with the occasional healing. But in Limbus there are so many different factors to think about to where you can't autopilot in hard fights such as boss fights. In those, you need to make sure to get ego for the big hits of the enemy, focus on destroying the correct body parts, adapting to their abilities, choosing the right clashes to win or to protect a staggered character, and deal with the events that pop up. And even before the fight, there is so much in team building. Like having units with synergy, making the 5 ego the all got add on to that, and the passive abilities of your unused sinners can also provide more team building options. Gotchas with complex team building usually don't have egregious power creep, and based on Project Moon's track record, even if an identity is considered garbage, I can imagine it being broken with the right team comp. And honestly, I can see myself saying screw the meta and using some of the cool looking identities, because these animations feel fucking brutal. They have a great sense of impact and has definitely awakened some primal serotonin in me. Now, that's all of what I love about the gameplay. Time to talk about what I hate, the people fights. In fights against people, you cannot freely choose your die and where they will land, unlike abnormality fights where you can select where the moves will go. This creates situations where you would be able to win if you could freely choose your moves, but the game forces you to be unable to, and therefore you lose. I get why they did it. It's because they want those fights to go by quickly, and when their enemy is stupider than the sinners, it works. It feels quick and good, but the second the enemy has one molecule of a brain cell, one fiber of a muscle, when their IQ is greater than mine, which really isn't saying that much, that's when those fights feel like ass. There have been times where I wanted to use an ego against a big hit, but since I couldn't freely redirect that big hit to my ego, I had to watch as one of my sinners ate shit, whilst the other used the ego against a coughing baby. Or there have been times where one sinner got staggered and I couldn't redirect the hits, so they got killed in one hit and the other 3 moves targeting them got automatically redirected to my other sinners as one-sided attacks. I don't get why we couldn't have both systems in those fights. If it's looking free, you can drag from left to right on the dashboard, but if it's difficult, you could individually select your moves. It's a weird restriction that feels like ass to play in, especially for a game that has amazing combat when you are given full control. Abnormality fights are considerably easier despite the fact they are meant to be more difficult. To put into perspective, I lost to about 5 or so human fights, yet only lost to 1 abnormality fight, which was the final boss in Chapter 3, the latest chapter currently available. All they have to do is make it so we can select freely in those fights and all my major flaws with the combat are gone. And it looks like they might do that according to the roadmap, but I'll cover that later. One more flaw with the game is mirror dungeons. Mirror dungeons are randomly generated roguelikes that give you weekly rewards. To get all rewards, you need to clear it 5 times a week, but the catch is that no auto-deploy or sweep function exists for them, and they take about 20 minutes to run. Thankfully, they will soon only require 3 runs a week, but it will get incredibly tiring way too fast if we need to spend an hour a week farming the dungeons in this game. They need to either introduce plan mode from NeuroCloud or sweep, because most people will drop the game before having to farm out mirror dungeons like that weekly. Now, there is another flaw, and that is the performance and bugs. Most bugs are on the mobile version, and there are enough of them to the point where I don't care to go over them. But the biggest is this game constantly crashing. Most of the time it's when people use ego, but there have been reports of crashes elsewhere. On PC, the only bug I encountered was a cutscene looping, but pressing skip scene fixed it. Now with time they will be fixed, and some already have been, but I can't recommend the game without saying that if you plan to play on mobile, you might have an ass experience, but some people have been saying the game runs fine on their phone. For the most part, it's still playable, but a block of shit is still technically edible. And looking up if what I just said was true led me to one of the weirdest Quora posts I've had the displeasure of reading. With time, it will get better, however that doesn't matter now because in the present, mobile is easily the worst platform to play on. And the UI was definitely not made for mobile. If it was, then they must have expected their players to have some fucking ET fingers to go through these menus. Especially the menu where you buy things. And on that note, let's talk about the gacha. In Ligma Company, you don't roll for characters, instead you roll for drip and egos. Now this drip has some nice ass art and great animations, same goes for the ego. And the rates to get them are pretty good, but there is no pity. Only a guarantee for something not ass on the 10th pull if you pulled 1 stars before it. However, there is a spark. At 400 ego shards you can buy a 3-star identity or ego. Here are the rates for getting shards, and you can get shards from mirror dungeons. After the change to them, you could get 24 to 72 ego shards for a random character in a week, or 15 to 45 for a specific character, whilst also getting more than 3 rolls. And for every level beyond 60 in the battle pass, you get a specific character shard, and the missions themselves give you 96 levels, which doesn't count the 2 levels per clear of mirror dungeons. Also, the battle pass has exclusive egos on the paid path, and when you make an account, you immediately get 65 rolls with the beginner banner guaranteeing you a 3-star identity. And rerolling is fast, but you can't do it on Steam. Personally, I feel like they should introduce more ways to get lunacy, especially considering that you only get 20 rolls from the story and your identity shards get halved with every season. But the game is still very free to play friendly. Because whilst you can roll for 3-star identities, the base identities get upgraded to the max for free, and they are sufficient enough to clear all content in the game currently. The rates are good to the point where you'll be able to get most 2-star identities, which are really close in power to the 3-star ones. Although as time progresses and more identities are added to the game, we need more ways to get lunacy. Though honestly, Limbus feels closer to a live service game than a gacha. I mean, they even made a roadmap for the game. Bro, this shit is feeling like a fucking This Week at Bungie, except it's called Update Fridays. And from the looks of it, we'll receive story content once a month, which to me is reason enough to play the game, as Project Moon has created an amazing world that I'm always curious to learn more about, which is why I love this game. The story is so well written, the combat is one of the rare times a gacha didn't have combat suited for a lobotomized patient, and the game is very free to play friendly. Although they really need a sweep function for mirror dungeons, optimized phones so they don't disintegrate whilst playing the game, and to make human fights not feel like I'm watching two drunk uncles duel it out in an alleyway. Because of that, I rate Limbus Company a 9 out of 10. If the flaws I find are fixed, then the game is easily a masterpiece. And it's important to note that to me a masterpiece isn't a perfect game, as I don't think that exists. To me, a masterpiece is the top of a genre, what you think about when that genre is mentioned. Like Berserk with dark fantasy, Steins Gate with time travel, and Astolfo with femboys. With these relatively easy to fix flaws gone, then Limbus Company will be one of the best gacha games I've played, and have the stupidest cast of characters I've had the pleasure of watching.
I would never